Hey guys, Spirit of the Lie here. Have you ever noticed an interesting behavior where villagers will organize your sheep automatically? I remember being somewhat impressed by this when first learning the game, as it made villagers feel intelligent in a way that wasn't common in games at the time. In this video, we're going to look into exactly how it works. Now, if you haven't run into this too much, it might mean you're just very conscientious about keeping your sheep close by. If sheep are kept within 3 tiles of the edge of the town center, then villagers will just take them where they are. It seems pretty clear the logic is that it's just not worth the effort to move them, as they're close enough. For context, taking food from a sheep at the outermost limit of that area results in about a 15% drop in collection rate. This would be considered a very inefficient distance in competitive play, as you really want your sheep directly under the town center if possible, with the other sheep close enough that they can't be stolen by a passing enemy scout. This is why a rogue villager will kill the sheep where it is instead of lining them up properly in most cases. In fact, the sheep really have to be either 4 or 5 tiles away from the town center to be shepherded consistently, as the villagers themselves are limited to 5 tiles of searching. So that's the sweet spot where you'll see this happen. In Definitive Edition, they send the sheep to very efficient locations under the town center, whereas back in the day, even in HD, they would line them up an extra tile away, adding some unnecessary travel distance and awkward pathfinding in older versions. In Definitive Edition, it's quite a bit better now at sending them exactly where they should go. I don't remember seeing this in a changelog, and it may not be a big deal in competitive players' minds, but it is a nice feature. As you've probably already noticed in the various examples as well, this behavior applies to multiple sheep at once. That brings up the question though of whether or not there's an upper limit to how many they can shepherd. In this test, we have 10 rows of sheep, and we'll see if they prefer to shepherd just the closest ones or all 192 of them. At least, I think it was 192, I fell asleep while counting them. What actually happens is very strange. When I have them target a sheep, they only grab 16, but heavily favoring the far left side. In practice, it's not often you'll have more than 16 sheep nearby to organize, and this is admittedly an extreme case, with some difficult pathfinding, though maybe not quite as difficult as the sheep are making it look. Trying it again with a smaller number of sheep, again we see they grab a maximum of 16, and prefer ones to the southwest, lining them up as best they can below the town center, though again the pathfinding leaves a little to be desired. Part of the problem is sheep are actually quite a large unit behind the scenes, with a 20% larger collision radius than cavalry, including battle and war elephants, believe it or not, so they have a lot of trouble moving around each other. But now let's go a bit deeper into how this works. One interesting little experiment is, notice here I have 11 sheep lined up, and the villager is able to shepherd all of them at once. That gives the impression she has a very large range, and might be bringing in all sheep within it, but it's not quite that simple. If we arrange the sheep differently, this time she doesn't reach the farthest sheep, even though it hasn't been moved since the last test. From this, it seems pretty obvious that she doesn't have a set range. What's actually happening is a much more nuanced herding behavior. When the villager moves a sheep, that command is actually chained to nearby sheep as long as they're close enough together. In this case, I have a long chain of sheep with only 2 tiles between them, and you can see they're all affected, while the sheep that were 3 tiles away aren't, even though they're closer to the town center. It seems the villager is only affecting the one unit they target, while the sheep themselves are communicating down the line to keep their flock together. Everything I know about shepherding comes from watching the movie Babe, so I'm not an expert on sheep behavior, but I can still appreciate the way it was programmed makes for some pretty natural looking movement with independent flocks of sheep. On the other hand, despite how it looks, the villager's shepherding animation actually doesn't do anything. It's literally just hand waving and pulling the wool over your eyes. Even without the villager performing that animation, the sheep will still continue to deliver themselves as soon as they start moving. Now, while it is often quite useful, this behavior is difficult to override if you don't want it, and clicking a sheep multiple times, for example, won't have a villager kill it if it's more than 3 tiles from a drop-off point. The exception is if you take over the sheep manually and make it act in a rebellious way, and then you can override the shepherding process. Alternately, if a sheep is more than 30 tiles away from your town center, the villager apparently doesn't think it's worth bringing back, and just downs them on the spot. That situation shouldn't come up too often, but means in most cases, if you target a sheep in your opponent's base, you won't see the shepherding behavior, as they're just too far away. You'll only see it for sheep between 3 and 30 tiles from a drop-off point. Now, I say a drop-off point and not just a town center, because they will use mills if they happen to be closer. The logic is basically identical and works how you'd expect. I should also point out that herdables come in all shapes and sizes, and all of what I'm saying applies equally to goats, turkeys, llamas, etc. So overall, I'd say the shepherding behavior is pretty impressive. It reduces long-distance gathering for the most part and has some good logic behind the scenes to make it appear natural. There is the 3-tile minimum range to be aware of though, where if you keep sheep close by, it won't activate the behavior. That makes it a bit less practical and certainly more rare to see when playing competitively, and you really want to be controlling your sheep individually with shift queuing and make sure to only take from one sheep at a time. I see this more as a relic of the early AoE2 days, before protecting sheep was really part of the game. Still, it's nice to see it's been updated in Definitive Edition to work a bit better and get the sheep right under the town center as they should be. That'll do it for this one though. I'm still getting settled in my new place, so just a quick video this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.